Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 118. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Happy Tuesday to you, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing? How was your weekend?
Weekend was fine. Went and saw Rocket Man.
How was it? I saw your review. You were all Roger Ebert on that review of Rocket Man.
Look, I'm not any kind of renowned film critic whatsoever. The only film I consider myself a good critic of is Steelers film. But as far as we obviously don't get to the movies too terribly much anyway, because I just don't like leaving the house that much, and B, there's not a lot out there that interests me. But when it comes to these rock movies and all, of course, the Queen one was done last year. This one is obviously about Elton John, and I won't get too terribly long-winded here, but it's kind of got a musical aspect to it, during the storytelling. We'll break into song and all, and I didn't see that coming. I obviously didn't read. I try to stay away from reviews and stuff like that before I go see something that I want to watch. But that kind of threw me for a loop there. But it did tell. I thought overall, I gave it a chance after that because I'm not a big musical kind of guy. That kind of stuff kind of went out the window with Grease years ago. And I know you probably haven't never seen the original Grease before, but I thought it told a story well about Elton John's life and all, and the music obviously. Get you tapping your foot in the theater and all like that. But other than that, I wouldn't go see it again. I'll tell you that. It's not as good. It wasn't as good as the Queen, as the Queen movie in my eyes there. But
you like the Queen movie? Because I know it did well, but I heard it got some bad personal reviews.
Oh no, I thought it was and plus I think it won all those awards as well too. And obviously you weren't alive back when what was the AIDS benefit concert way back?
Live
Aid and all. Boy, they had that sequence down to a T. There really brought back a lot of memories back in the early '80s of that and all. But I thought they nailed it. I thought the actor nailed Freddie Mercury and all like that. And obviously the music in it was good as well too. But that Queen movie is something that I watch every time that it comes on the TV or on HBO or whatnot moving forward. But as far as the Elton John movie, it was good, but I've moved past it now.
All right, well, there's Dave's movie reviews. We'll check in each week. I watched The Martian this week on the couch, and it was pretty good. I love Matt Damon. So,
I do too. My wife didn't care for that, but that's the kind of movie too. I found myself that every time, and just now, and I saw it right after it hit video years ago. There, in fact, I think that was even before I moved to Vegas there, and that's the kind of movie. My wife doesn't care for Matt Damon or that movie, but I will watch it every time it comes on now, and it seems to be on the TV almost every other night. that you scroll through things. So I thought that was good. And I think the next one I want to see this summer is that Yesterday movie, about the guy that gets the amnesia and supposedly, the Beatles don't exist anymore or whatnot. He ends up writing all the Beatles songs. That looks pretty interesting as well too. So now that we killed about 10 minutes in movie reviews, I guess we should talk a little bit about the Steelers. And obviously they're getting back to their third and final week of OTAs this week after having their team building their annual team building day on Monday, and they threw us for a loop, Alex. I thought they were either going to go to Dave and Buster's or to the bowling alley. This year they went to Top Golf, so I didn't really see that one coming there. They obviously spent some time there, and I think a lot of the younger players and rookies went out to the Pittsburgh Children's Hospital after that and spent a lot of good quality time there, and a lot of good pictures came out of that from both the hospital and the Steelers and a few of the players on the Twitter machine yesterday as well too. So the team building aspect of the OTAs is now behind us, and now we'll see if this team can get through the final three days of OTA practices, and then obviously next week is the mandatory mini camp, and then there'll be a break for about 5 weeks.
And Dave, while it was pretty quiet, like you said, during the last couple days, a little bit of news coming out of Pittsburgh today. Actually, not anything groundbreaking, but certainly probably the most notable thing right now to pass along. Steelers have made 2 coaching hires, and they're going to be 2 familiar faces. William Gay and David Johnson hired as coaching interns for 2019.
Yeah, coaching interns, and that's usually something that happens this time of year. And I think the NFL's diversity committee has recommended really that all 32 teams take a more proactive approach in identifying the diverse kind of candidates to become coaches in the NFL. And a lot of times teams are going to stick to guys that they know, former players and all. And boy, William Gay, I mean, you look at the names of William Gay and David Johnson. Both guys obviously have spent a lot of time around the Steelers organization as former players. And William Gay, well, both of them obviously former Steelers draft picks. Gay, I think 5th round, and David Johnson, what was he, like 6th or 7th round? Yeah, many moons ago. He obviously left a season or 2. I think went and played in San Diego. There, William Gay obviously left for a season there and went to Arizona. But obviously the guy I'm most excited about, and you probably are as well too, when it comes to both these guys being interns, is William Gay. And I don't know, countless times over the years you have written about even when William Gay was a player, or mainly when William Gay was a player, his ability, his film study ability. I mean, if you want to talk about a guy that incredibly smart on the back end of that defense when he played, it was William Gay. Now, did that sometimes work to his disadvantage of him trying to jump routes and whatnot? Yeah, but it also led to him making a couple of picks and all as well. So I think William Gay is and obviously was a great leader and great voice in that locker room for many years as well. Boy, I'm excited about the Steelers having him as a coaching intern this summer.
Me too, for both those guys, and they've been there throughout OTAs already. I spotted a photo of David Johnson back in early May, so they've been here this whole time. Now it's just official. But yeah, and we hear about, the Steelers should hire really any team, but hire this former player, hire James Harrison, hire Troy, hire Hines Ward, and there's certainly value in that. But I think there's something to be said about 2 guys that were kind of salt of the earth, self-made guys that really had to work for it. They weren't blessed. And David Johnson was this talent that came natural to them. They really had to work for everything that they got. And I think that helps you as a coach, because now you can actually talk about the techniques and the details and explain things to players the way that you had to learn it yourself. For a guy like maybe Troy, for example, some of that stuff that comes natural to you, it's hard to convey that as a coach because you just do it. It just kind of felt like an instinct and a thing you could always do. So, when you hire coaches, you want someone who can teach and translate skills, not just say, do what I do. You have to show them the way. So I think there's value of that with Gay and David Johnson. But it's funny, Dave, William Gay was part of Mike Tomlin's first ever draft class, and now Mike Tomlin has hired him to be a coach. So it's just, we're all very, very old.
Absolutely, and like I said, too, Gay for several years there was almost like having a coach on the field. And if there's anyone that you can see down the line potentially becoming a secondary coach, whether it be the Steelers or the rest of the NFL, it's definitely William Gay. So glad to see that, and obviously you'll probably be seeing a lot more of them when you get out to Latrobe later on in the summer here.
Mm-hmm. And to an extent, it is nice to have that continuity with former players coming back to be coaches. We've seen Ward do it in the past, Alan Faneca, some other names I'm sure are missing off the top of my head right now. So that's always nice. And again, I think whatever you need to do to help the secondary group out, because they got to be developed, they got to be coached, they got to turn this thing around. So if you can hire Gay and help on that player-to-player basis, I mean, you have different perspectives. You got Tom Bradley, who came from the coaching ranks. You got Terrell Austin, who's been in the NFL for a long time. You have Gay, that was a player a short time ago. Maybe you just throw in all those perspectives and hope something clicks, because it certainly has to click.
Maybe Gay can also teach those guys how to catch a football.
Well, you know what? That's probably a good segue to one of the biggest topics we wanted to talk about today. Dave, we discussed mused, I should say, on Friday's show about, how many takeaways does this team need? What is kind of the baseline to become a Super Bowl winning team in terms of number of turnovers? We know this defense did not create nearly enough turnovers last year. It was one of the biggest reasons why this team missed out on the playoffs. So, I went in over the weekend with kind of a baseline study just to try to get a goal number, just what is the minimum number of takeaways that theoretically this defense needs to be able to win a Super Bowl. And I came up with 25. 18 of the last 19 Super Bowl winners had at least 25 takeaways. The only exception is New England, who had 23 in 2016. So that's kind of the number I want this team to shoot for. And it's really funny to frame it that way, because I looked at what the Steelers have done. 7 of the last 8 years, they've been under 25 takeaways. Only once were they over that threshold. So that's the number for me to hit. If I'm on, if I'm Keith Butler, if I'm Mike Tomlin, on their playbooks, their game plans each week, I want to write that goal in big, bold letters. 25 takeaways. That has to be the goal for this defense.
And that's kind of the number we kind of been screaming, right? I mean, we kind of guessed the other day, right? It'd be around 25, just from a guesstimation standpoint before you did that study.
Did we talk about that? I couldn't remember if we put a number to it.
Yeah, I think we did. I think,
Okay.
Because look, I said last year, you look at, the interceptions and the 15 total. I said, man, that number just isn't going to cut it. That number's going to have to be, I forget, I had to go back and listen to it, but I know I was about 10 higher or something like that. I think I even framed it like if I gave you 10 more turnovers versus 10 less explosive plays, which one would you take? And I think without a doubt, it has to be the turnovers, because the field position that provides you, I think, would make up for you losing some of that yardage there in the explosive plays there. But I'm not surprised that I'll put it to you this way. I'm not surprised that it ended up being that number. And I think that is, look, you hate to boil this game down just to a simple stat like that, and winning the turnover margin and all like that. But it is what it is, and the numbers don't lie. And if you look, we also talked a little bit again last week about the talk stat, when adding in the differential of takeaways and explosive plays. Look, I mean, that's got an 80% plus, win history going back, forever and a day when it comes to the talk stat there. So turnovers and explosive plays mean a lot, and this team just obviously did not have enough of those last year. And you would have to think, with the what was it? What did we determine the number was? The dropped interceptions. 12, 13, 14?
13, 14, yeah.
I mean, even if you just have catch a couple more of those, enough to decide one of those games possibly that they lost. And obviously that would have got you into the playoffs, and who knows what happens at that point moving forward there. So yeah, with the loss of AB this offseason, and the defense just had, we've been screaming this for years, the defense has to be better. And if they're not, I don't care. I don't want to see Ben have to throw for 5,000 yards this year. I'd much rather see Ben throw for 4,100 yards and work on a lot shorter fields, and the team, provide more Putos opportunities, as I like to call them. But good work on that. I'm not overly surprised that number came in at 25. And I'm going to go out on a limb here right now, Alex. If the Steelers don't get 25 or more turnovers in 2019, they're not going to win the Super Bowl.
Hey, that's what the numbers say. And just to put it the last 3 years, last year 15, 2017 they had 22, 2016 they had 23. Now 2015 they did have 30. That's the only time they've been over that 25 mark. But that's what they got to do. And I think that's a very attainable goal based on what happened last year. They should have had 25 takeaways last year, but that's got to be the minimum bar for what this team has to do, for all the reasons you mentioned and what the history shows. And I think that segues nicely into a post that you did yesterday as well, Dave, kind of talking about some of the, again, missed opportunities and missed chances to create takeaways, and with some of the fumbles, because they forced a lot of fumbles last year. T.J. Watt forced, 6 of them by himself, but they just could not recover the ball either.
Yeah, and before we get to that, I mean, let's talk a little. Let's wrap up. I mean, we've talked about those dropped interceptions since late last season. There, you did that post on them there, and obviously PFF has written about it and has their numbers and all. Well, Keith Butler just sat down with Missy Matthews of Steelers.com the other day for an interview, and he also talked about those, the turnover, the takeaway ratio, and those dropped interceptions. And Keith went as far as say the difference between 13 13-3 and 9-6-1 were those dropped interceptions for us. He told Missy, he says our takeaway ratio wasn't as good as it has been. I think I think if we can just catch some of the balls that we had the opportunity to catch, it would make all the difference. We got to make sure that if we get our hands on the ball, we have to complete the catch. And it's all kind of a trickle down thing from there. You catch some of those balls, you get some of the shorter fields. Ben and the rest of the offense not having to drive the 75 yards. You get into the whole field position battle thing, which the Steelers just, it seems like forever they just battling and losing that field position aspect of the game. On top of that, the special teams return units haven't been great, and also I really think all this boils down to the turnovers. And then, as you said, and we've talked about this a little bit, but I think I said that I wanted to go back and review these plays specifically, and that's the fact that, even though the Steelers did have quite a few takeaways via the fumbles last year, they left a lot of loose footballs on the field that they probably should have had at least half of them maybe, but the ball bounces a certain direction, and you probably would consider it more unlucky, I think, than anything the way the football bounced on several times. But I went back through, in total, the Steelers had 8 times that they knocked the football loose from their opponent, only to not recover it. And T.J. Watt, probably not surprisingly, I think was responsible for 4 of those failed fumble takeaways. You might as well give him a 5th one in there. The Lamar Jackson, of course, Lamar Jackson fumbled quite a bit last year as it was, but there was that one exchange, and I think it was the Week 9 game early on against the Steelers, where he tried to put the football in the belly of running back Glenn Edwards, and boy, Watt was crashing down so quick on that play there that I think Lamar Jackson kind of tightened up a little bit, put the football on the ground, but unfortunately the Steelers didn't come up with that one. Bud Dupree in the season, go back and you look at these plays, and what I did is I looked at the situation and how things may have changed. Now, obviously, when you get into the space-time continuum,
that's some heavy words from Dave Bryan on a Tuesday morning.
Trying to predict what may have happened is tough, but I just tried to generally set the stage on some of these things. That Week 1 strip sack of Bud Dupree against the Browns happened it ended up being the last play of the first half in that game against the Browns, and people say, well, okay, probably not much changes there, but correct me if I'm wrong. The clock stops on change of possession inside 2 minutes, even, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, the Steelers still had one timeout at the time. Joe Patonio had recovered that football at Cleveland's own 41-yard line. So let's say that the Steelers get the ball at the Browns' 41-yard line in that instance. There's still roughly around 30 seconds left on the clock. The clock obviously would stop on change of possession. They have one timeout left. There's an opportunity to at least move 15, 18 yards and get in the potential field goal range for Chris Boswell. And we all know that game ended up being a tie ball game there. So even though that happened on what ended up being the last play of the first half, there was still an instance there where it could have made a difference possibly in the game had the Steelers gotten that football and gotten some points. And then, when you look at the failed fumble recovery against the Chiefs, which was actually happened on the punt return, Cameron Sutton caught D'Anthony Thomas from behind, knocked that football loose up into the air. The ball never hit the ground. It's hard to predict, what if this, that, and the other. But, make no mistake about it that Thomas returned that punt back to the Steelers' 10-yard line, and that easily set up the Chiefs' first score early in the game. And I think overall, the takeaway here, and look, some of these failed fumble recoveries came in games that they ended up winning. The game against the Panthers, Watt had one there. The game against the Jaguars, Watt had another one there in that game, and he also went on to have 2 more in the finale especially against the Bengals that the Steelers weren't able to get. Thankfully, the team won, those 3 games there. But one game that they didn't win was the game against the Saints there, and in that one, Joe Hayden knocked the football loose out from Mark Ingram in a goal-to-go situation there at the 1-yard line, and that ball, obviously popped out of bounds. What if that ball goes 1 yard forward and then in and out through the end zone? Well, the Saints don't have that scoring opportunity there that they ultimately scored a couple plays later on, and instead the Steelers had the ball 1st and 10 at their own 20-yard line. So, it's a huge play there, and I think more than anything, it's easy to look at the interceptions and say, man, just catch the football. It's not so easy to do with these failed forced fumble recoveries there, and you got to just chalk a lot of it up to being unlucky there.
Yeah, the fumbles are a little bit tougher to hold against the team just because of the luck factor. The dropped interceptions are entirely on the team, but a lot more correctable. But still, it's a missed opportunities, and you say, can we do something better? Is there more ball awareness we need, more hustle to football? Those are things that can always be looked at. And just to provide clarity, the reason why I chose a takeaway stat for the study that I did, I know that obviously turnover ratio is going to be maybe just as important, if not a more important number. And I referenced on a previous show, the 2 numbers you want to look at in 2019 are turnover ratio and red zone efficiency. But the reason why I chose takeaways was for the defense, I wanted to give them a goal that's entirely within their control. Obviously, turnover ratio is not entirely within the defense's control. It's a team stat, not a one-side stat. So, this is the number I wanted to give the defense to say, this is what you guys have to do this year. This is why last year wasn't good enough. This is where we need to be. I think you want to give something specific to really, have that number to be highlighted for the entire year. So that's why I went with takeaways. And I still believe, obviously, it's a really important number. Obviously, teams that take away the football more generally are going to have better turnover ratios and just better success all around. So, it's obvious. It's not a secret. I'm not pretending this is some sort of hidden stat that I've come up with in the lab. It's a clear stat. Everyone knows about it, but I wanted to ascribe a particular number. This is what they have to hit, and 25 is that number.
Overall, I didn't, you'd obviously like, the more forced fumbles, the better by a defense. Gives you more opportunity to get a ball that's on the ground there. But overall, and I don't know this for a fact. I haven't looked to compare the numbers, but I thought overall the amount of forced fumbles that the Steelers had on both defense and special teams was probably right there, around league average. But boy, when you look at T.J. Watt and the 6 forced fumbles that he had last year, and quite honestly, that number could have probably, you could make a strong argument for giving him a 7th one, as I said, against the Ravens as well too. He ranked right up there in the league lead in that category. Some guy named J.J. Watt, who may or may not be related to T.J. Watt, had 7. D. Ford had 7, and then you have T.J. Watt had 6, and Khalil Mack had 6 as well too. So there's your top 4 in forced fumbles last year, and obviously Watt got a few of those coming free, but those things are going to happen, and you just got to take advantage of the situations when they do let you run free. And you look back at the interception that Watt caused in that game against the Panthers, and ended up being a pick 6 by him coming free. You just got to take advantage of the situations when that happens, and obviously T.J. Watt did. So nothing wrong with the forced fumbles, that T.J. Watt's creating. You just like to see the Steelers be able to pounce on a few more of them than they did the previous season.
Yep, and that's on everyone else. I mean, Watt's forcing them, someone else has to clean that play up. But, yeah, we know the number. We know the takeaways, the turnovers they got to create. I mean, we've harped on that a lot, but we've harped on it so much because it is such a critical number that's going to determine this team's success, especially with obviously losing a little bit of juice offensively. Dave, Matthew and I have written about this topic the last couple of days. Just to flip to the other side of the football, go to the trenches for the offensive line. I think that's a really important thing to look at, and I'm glad that we were able to frame it with a ranking. Pro Football Focus has the Steelers as the 3rd best team in picking up stunts from an offensive line standpoint, so basically allowing the 3rd least amount of pressure whenever defenses stunt. I think only the Patriots, unsurprisingly, and the 49ers were ahead of Pittsburgh. And I wrote an article today at Film Room that just kind of highlighted some of the stunt pickup and why this team is so good at it, and just to kind of put the tape to the number. And obviously losing Mike Munchak, I thought one of the biggest things that Munchak did was really repping that stunt pickup. I mean, look at training camp, any single practice in training camp, you saw this team working stunts, 2-man work, 3-man work. I mean, they repped it literally every single day. And the year before he got there under Jack McNeil Jr., this team was terrible. I believe I had a post a long time ago that said they gave up 8 sacks off of stunts the year before Munchak got to Pittsburgh. So, and since then, they may have given up 8 collectively over the last 5 years. It might be that really kind of overall success. So, I expect this to still be a good group under Sean Surratt, something that he's probably going to continue to rep. And I don't expect a change there, but I think just one of the things I'm going to look for, in evaluating Sean Surratt, because coaches are tough to evaluate, it's going to be the line stunt pickup, because it's going to be part of a game plan thing, a tape study thing, and making sure these players are prepared. But that's why I like the continuity of this offensive line. That's why you like to have the same guys coming into the room for the most part, with the slight exception of Marcus Gilbert, because it's going to help that continuity, that chemistry, and help things like stunt pickup.
And remember that Marcus Gilbert was just, didn't play a lot of games last year either. So, I mean, Matt Filer, we've talked several times about how good a job he did. You would think that Chooks Okorafor will eventually, maybe as even early as this summer, make the move to take over that starting right tackle spot and be able to handle that. And he obviously had to start and play in that one game last year, and I thought they did a good job. Overall, he did a good job in that game as well too there. So as long as you have that continuity in there and you don't get hit by the injury bug, knock on wood, you should be fine. And going back through some of those games last year, a lot of people probably forget that you even had B.J. Finney have to make a start on the right side in place of David DeCastro. And I think was it the game? Was it the Chiefs game, or I think it was a game against the Chiefs?
Probably the Chiefs started all of the games against the Chiefs. That sounds about right.
You go back. I was looking at some highlights just yesterday on the Twitter machine of that game, and B.J. Finney doing some pulling and pass protecting in those situations. I thought he really represented himself well there. So you've got a core offensive line there that's still going to probably has, or at least most of them have a good chance of sticking around at least maybe 2 more seasons in total here. We'll have to see what happens, obviously, with Ramon Foster getting up there in age and all. But as long as you have that continuity and you have a guy in Sean Surratt who coached several years prior to getting a job underneath Mike Munchak, you would hope that stunt pickup and all ability and the stuff you'll be looking for this year doesn't go the opposite direction.
And Finney spoke briefly to, I think it was Mike Pursuta on Steelers.com the other day, and just said basically that it's business as usual in that offensive line room. Yes, losing Munchak sucks, and they're going to miss someone like Marcus Gilbert, but Finney said that the only difference is that Surratt doesn't have Munchak's dry sense of humor, and that's the only difference. So that just speaks to the level of continuity. And then I really like the hire of Adrian Clem. Not that I know much about Clem himself, but another reason why I think the Steelers' offensive line has been so talented and so productive the last 5 years is because they had 2 guys dedicated to the offensive line. Because if you have only one coach for that offensive line, that's a big group, especially in training camp. You have 16, 17, maybe even 18 linemen in that room. That's more than any other position coach is going to have to deal with. And to try to give the attention to each position and each group and each rep in practice and have one guy responsible for all that, regardless of how good of a coach you are, that's really tough to do. So I think the value the Steelers had was with Munchak and Surratt being able to break the groups up, give more individual attention, break the groups up into tackles and interior alignment and rep different drills for their specific play positions and skill sets. So now you have Clem, who played in the NFL, has a bit of credibility in that sense. I think will produce a similar result. So, still the bar is very high for this offensive line, but that's also a lot of pressure on Surratt to pass the torch and to pick up where Munchak left off.
And I'll just put it to you this way. Offensive line right now is the least of my concern.
Yeah, amen to that.
You stay up late worrying a little bit about this defense and maybe how some of the wide receivers are going to do in this upcoming season here. But you have that older offensive line group, and you would expect some of these veterans to help Surratt teach some of these things on down to whatever younger group winds up sticking here. And it seems like we've said this the last several years. Boy, you've got an exciting group of young offensive linemen and an exciting group of young wide receivers on this team right now too. And the running back position seems to be more set than maybe it was a year ago at this time here. We're kind of comfortable about that, even though you lose a guy in Le'Veon Bell who wasn't with the team last year. But offensive line ranks way down there in when it comes to my level of concerns.
Mine too. And if I haven't put you to sleep yet with the stunt talk and offensive line technique stuff, Dave,
I love that stuff. I love that stuff. I love watching keeping them on the same levels and little things like that.
Yeah, no, I know you and I love it. I'm sure somebody's just like, all right, let's move on here. We're going to talk about the cap now, so you might be put to sleep. Not you, Dave. I know that you're wired up for this one, but Dave, you had an interesting post yesterday. You posted about the Steelers cap space, and obviously right now they're pretty close to being up against the cap. But as all teams do, they're able to massage the cap and change things and restructure deals, and you anticipate pretty likely some restructure is going to happen by now until late summer.
Yeah, and it floors me that we've gotten after getting the rookie draft class signed last week with Justin Lane and all. Now people are starting to they're starting to write and say things like, oh, they've done such a bad job at managing the cap and all. Look, when you have that big dead money hit that Antonio Brown had this offseason, and then you throw in the $9 million over $9 million that Bud Dupree's getting on the fifth-year option, you throw in the fact that Ben Roethlisberger's cap number, previously scheduled number, actually jumped up a little bit more than originally thought. If right now, in fact, the NFLPA just updated the report this morning to show the signing of Justin Lane last week. They now have, and this should be real time as of right now because nothing has happened since the Justin Lane signing. The Steelers have 984 or almost 985,000 in available cap space right now, and people will see that number and evidently already reading some stuff on Over the Cap and are freaking out about the Steelers cap situation. If you thought the Steelers were going to use the rest of this offseason to sign anybody more than a minimum salary or much more than $1 million per year, you haven't been paying attention to this team for the last 20 years. It's just not how they operate. Now, could they have multiple injuries here between now and a situation where they just have to bring in somebody and pay them a little bit more than they'd like to? Sure, but we haven't gotten to that part. That said, when you have a little less than $1 million in cap space, which the Steelers have right now, you're probably going to gain a little bit of cap space moving forward, through maybe an extension or two, or just flat out cutting some players that don't make the 53. But you don't know how that's going to shake out right now. At some point, and really, people should have expected this all along, you're probably going to have a contract restructure or two. I mean, it's pretty much par for the course for the Steelers. And the good thing is they've had to do it seemingly less and less of these, the last few years here. And I think when you look at candidates to have their contract restructured at some point during the summer, you come up with a short list of Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, David DeCastro, Alejandro Villanueva, and Vance McDonald. Now, do you probably want to go messing with Vance McDonald's contract there with the restructure with some of the injury history that he's had? Probably not. Alejandro Villanueva, how much will Alejandro Villanueva maybe want to play past this season? I mean, you could go to him and get a couple $1 million in cap space by just restructuring his contract to the max. The same with David DeCastro. There's a couple, there's more than a few million there that could be done with there, but he's got a pretty leveraged contract at this point, as does Stephon Tuitt as well, due to past restructures. Now, Cameron Hayward. People say, well, why the heck do you want to restructure a guy like Cameron Hayward when he only has 2 years left on his contract, and he's and the Steelers restructured his contract each of the last 2 off seasons? It seems kind of foolish, Dave, to restructure that. Well, actually, no. In fact, of the 5 guys that I just named there, Cameron Hayward probably makes the most sense to restructure. You can clear up almost $4 million with a full restructure. B, In doing so, yeah, it would increase his cap hit in 2020, which is currently the final year of his contract, from 13.2 up to 17.1. But do keep in mind that this same time next year, Cameron Hayward's probably going to be signing a contract extension if he hasn't already. And in doing so, you can obviously lower what would potentially be a 17.1 salary cap charge by at least probably $4.5 million by just signing him to an extension, maybe a 4-year, 3-year extension, something along those lines. There, probably 4 years is what it would end up being. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see Cam Hayward probably not playing at least 4 more years past this season there. So, to me, I would expect if they do only one restructure, and they might do two, but if they only do one, I fully expect Cameron Hayward to be involved in that to free up $3.91 million for all the reasons that I just said, because he's probably going to get a new contract a year from now. Now, when will the Steelers do this? Well, the last 2 years with Cameron Hayward, they waited until late in the preseason to get this done. So we could see a repeat of that. You want to make sure he gets through the rest of the offseason injury free and all, and you'll keep your options open with these other players as well too. So right now, look, they have less than $1 million in cap space, but what do they need any more cap space for right now? They really don't, unless they have to go out and sign somebody for a lot more than the veteran minimum there. So when you see this number, don't freak out about it. I mean, this is par for the course, and this should have been expected all along here. And at some point, they'll because the team generally likes to go in and should be expected to go into the regular season this year with around $5 million in available cap space, just to use as a sort of an injury buffer there. So my prediction would be that Cameron Hayward gets his restructure done, I don't know, late August, if not sooner.
This is going to be a pretty broad question, Dave, and I don't mean to send you down a rabbit hole for another hour with this question here, but do you think the Steelers have done a better job managing their cap over the last 2-3 seasons as previously before, or do you think it's more of the same?
It's all about maximizing and being right up against the cap as best as you can, and still staying in that. There's a 4-year period in the CBA. Every 4 years in the CBA, a team has to spend at least 89% of the total cap dollars in cash. Okay, and the Steelers do that. The Steelers aren't one of these teams that runs around with the $20 or $30 million in available cap space. They always generally they do a good job of staying right in the levels of spending the necessary cash versus cap dollars. Now, it makes it easy when you have a franchise quarterback involved in that, high dollar, because you've got the cash outlay with him every 4 years as well too. And then look, I mean, make no mistake about it, the Steelers generally do a good job when it comes to their first round picks and some of their second round picks, and getting a lot of these guys to second contracts. The Cameron Haywards, the David DeCastros. Heck, you got Marquise Pouncey on yet another contract here, and that's going to help you spend that cash as well too. And like it or not, and I say this several times, the sins of having a franchise quarterback is that you run up right up against the cap. I think generally overall, when it comes to these restructures and all, I think they've been a little bit more responsible with them, and I guess that's kind of your overall question here with them. But look, you make no mistake about it, you got to do what you got to do, to pay the roster that you want to pay, and move forward. And nobody massages the cap better. And they take a lot of heat from it, from executives and former executives around the league. From the Andrew Brandts and the J.J. Hoswells out there or whatnot, J.I. Hoswells, that they should be more of a cash only team, but that's not how they do business. Nobody massages the cap better than the Steelers. So overall, look, I mean, like I said, I think they've done a good job of not going overboard in some of these restructures, and obviously, I think it's been a little while since they've gotten bit by one. The
Right.
whole
Or
Lamar
the league.
Woodley and Willie Colon things and all like that. But, I mean, you don't go into this thing planning for injuries.
No, of course not. And as you said, when you have a franchise quarterback, it really eats up a lot of your cap space. That's why teams like the Rams and Chiefs have been able to build teams. That's a big philosophy that teams have today. Is that if you have a franchise quarterback on a rookie deal, like you have in say Kansas City, I mean that's your window to win and be aggressive. Because once you got to pay that quarterback, as someone like Seattle has found out, it really tightens up what else you can do with the rest of your roster. So that's the life of having. That's the one downside to have a franchise quarterback. Everybody wants a franchise quarterback, and rightfully so. But that is the one downside, is that it eats up a whole heck of a lot of cap space.
Now, obviously, I mean, look, make no mistake about it. If they would have known AB was going to go AB like he did, they should have never restructured his contract last offseason.
Sure.
I mean, boy, they tried to work with that guy and front him some money along the way too. A couple years back there because because he had outplayed his contract. I thought the Steelers were more than fair with AB throughout this entire process here. But yet, they still got screwed on it. And make no mistake about it, when you have to eat $20 million in dead money, that's going to leave a mark, as they say. And hindsight being, if your hindsight was 20/20, then obviously you'd go back and you would find other ways. But the other thing about the Steelers is they have no issue paying the players that they want to keep. And some people will probably say, well, Stephon Tuitt hasn't lived up to his contract maybe like he should, and these kind of things. Yeah, you're going to miss occasionally on these, but make no mistake about it, too, Stephon Tuitt has not been awful. He's missed some time with injury there, and he probably doesn't have a few sacks and a few stuffs that people would like him to have, but he's still a fairly young player, and to me, it is money that you had to spend, because if you didn't spend it on him, you're going to lose him, and you have to try to replace that player at least his value or higher. And there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to do it. And the age-old saying, the Steelers are firm believers in pay the players that you want to keep, and they try to do that.
And that's why they're often up against the cap. But as I think you laid out, it's not nearly as bad as it looks right now. They'll create room, as they always do. There's always a plan in place. I think you're always confident with that, with the Steelers in the front office and the management side of things. So all good there. Dave, just a couple more small things to get to before we get to some reader emails. Gerald McCoy, and this was kind of I did a little fist pump when I saw the news about this yesterday. McCoy was doing his tour around the NFL after getting released by Tampa Bay. He had visits to Cleveland and Baltimore, and I'm thinking, man, I got to see Gerald McCoy in the AFC North. But no, he's going to go to Carolina, try to get some revenge on Tampa Bay. So I was happy to see McCoy stay in the NFC South.
Yeah, he's still a good football player, and the 1 year, what was it, a 1 year deal totaling out with a max value around $10.5 or so million, I think was the exact numbers on that. Definitely a kind of deal that give him an opportunity to earn some money and then possibly hit free agency again and recoup some of that money. I've always been a McCoy fan, and I was a bit surprised they moved on from him this offseason. And obviously, they brought in Ndamukong Suh to help kind of fill that gap there, though. But, at least he's not in the NFC North. And the last time I looked, I don't believe the Steelers have to play the Panthers this year. So unless the two teams were to meet in the Super Bowl, and I would sign up for that right now.
Yeah, I played him last year, so you won't see McCoy probably for a while. You'll see him in the preseason, but luckily, no, you won't see Gerald McCoy in that preseason game, so that's good. You have to thank Tampa, because if it wasn't for Tampa being a little petty and A, signing Suh, which, I mean, that itself is fine, but B, giving Suh McCoy's number 93 right out of the gate, honestly, I think that McCoy saw that and didn't like it, and that kind of sealed the deal to stay in Carolina to see Tampa Bay twice a year and make him regret that decision.
Yeah, so. And we'll see how he moves forward, obviously. And look, I think it came down to it was who's going to be the highest bidder here and give me an opportunity to make. I think he's going to fit in well with that Panthers defense, quite honestly, as long as he can stay healthy.
Yeah, but they were switching to a 3-4, so I know that schemes are blurred, but it is going to be a bit different of a fit, I think. But he'll make it work. He's Gerald McCoy, so. Like I said, the schemes are blurred. Ryan Shazier was named the George Halas Award winner by Pro Football Writers Association for just kind of his comeback and the progress that he's made. So that was a really great thing to hear. And you just see Shazier's continued progress. And, what more can you say other than just being inspired and just insanely impressed by the progress that he's shown?
Yeah, as soon as you saw him on that list of 5 or 6 finalists that was released a couple weeks ago, and obviously James Conner was on that list as well too. Part of you said, "Boy, you sure would like to see the two of those guys maybe share that award or whatnot." But look, Shazier has really made a lot of great strides and overcome a lot of obstacles so far. And obviously, he isn't all the way back, and we don't know if he ever will get all the way back. But at least he is walking, able to play with his son, was able to dance at his wedding, several weeks ago and all as well too, and just continue to keep your fingers crossed. And I think it was he was an easy selection probably for the Pro Football Writers Association this year when it came to this award, and first time that a Steelers player has won it since 1985, I think, when John Stallworth won it, and then prior to that it was Rocky Bleier, I think in 1975, 74, 75, when Bleier had won it. So congratulations to Ryan Shazier for winning that award.
And we all know the story with Bleier. What's the story with Stallworth? What happened with? How did he win it in '85? Do you remember? Was there an injury or something?
I don't remember. I meant to go back and look at that, but I'm easily distracted.
What? No, I don't know about that. Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious. Maybe you can find the story on that. I mean, I'm assuming it was some sort of injury, but I obviously everyone knows Bleier's story coming over from the war, but I didn't realize that Stallworth had won it, and I don't know what happened to get him that award in '85.
I'll have to look.
But yeah, let me know about that. With what other, I think, quick thing, unless you wanted to throw something else in there, Dave. This is just, I guess, the Le'Veon Bell segment of the podcast, but he's at mandatory minicamp with the Jets. That's, to me, really a non-story, but he's there, he's working out, and the New York media will do as the New York media does.
Boy, he's asking for it, isn't he? I mean, he's literally just asking for it. No wonder he's at mandatory minicamp, because he stands to lose money if he doesn't show up for that. But I just think, personally, I would have gone about this a little bit differently if I was him. I mean, I understand wanting to get, do the things that you normally do in your own off-season training and all like that. And obviously, he's missed the last two. I mean, he's been away. He's kind of made it a habit of training away from teams during the OTA process due to the franchise tags and all like that. I just think I would have gone about it a different way if I were him. I would have showed up at all those OTA practices. I mean, look, even Steve McClendon, former Steelers, reached out to him and said, look, it's probably a good idea that you show up for these things. And he obviously didn't. Whatever he gets from the media in New York, he gets. And I just got a bad feeling about this thing for him this year, Alex. And, they're obviously going to have to use him heavily, but because they're paying him all that money. But, being out of football for a year like that, going to a new offense, not having been Roethlisberger, I put it to you this way. I'm not drafting Le'Veon Bell in the first round of any of my fantasy drafts this year.
I think you and a lot of Steeler fans will be in that same boat. There's definitely not a lot of precedent for a guy in this situation, a year away from football by choice, coming to a new team, still with really high expectations. So, yeah, I'm not sure how many other case studies there have been like this one. But I will defend Bell a little bit. While, yes, ideally you'd like him there for OTAs, they are voluntary, and really this is all stuff that we've forgotten by week one of the regular season. It's like in Cleveland, you got Tony Grossi going on and on and on about Odell Beckham Jr. not being at OTAs, and it just becomes just off-season fodder at that point. So I kind of take this stuff with a grain of salt.
True or false? Bell's running style will take a lot for the Jets' offensive line to get used to.
That's tough to answer with a true false, because that's, there's a lot of variables at play. I'll generally say false because, I mean, it's true to a small extent that, yes, it's a different running style, but when you have a top running back like Le'Veon Bell, that's a good problem to have for an offensive line to try to adjust to. So I don't think it's going to be a huge issue.
I think it'll be more than what I think it'll be more of an issue than what you think. Okay. Quite honestly, I mean, we've heard some of these Steelers offensive linemen talk about having to hold those blocks a little bit longer.
Yeah, but that's something you figure out pretty quickly.
Sure.
That's something that gets coached early anyway. Finish your blocks. I mean,
true, but I mean, do they have or B? Do they have the quality of offensive linemen?
Well, that's a different question. That's a fair question. That's a better question, but it's a different question.
To get that done there. I mean, are we 4 weeks into the season? And make no mistake about it, regardless of if it's on the offensive line or what, if Le'Veon Bell comes out of the chute not top 5 in the league, they're going to be all over him.
Oh yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
yeah, for sure.
and that thing can snowball and will snowball in a hurry on him. And I just got a bad feeling about him, man. Look, I thought, I thought if Le'Veon Bell would have stayed with the Steelers throughout, his entire career, especially after those first 3 or 4 seasons that he had, I thought, man, this guy has a potential to be, you know, to be one of the best all time,
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's gone and messed that up. Now I understand the whole money, the whole guaranteed money, and we spent hours of showtime going over that and all. But I really think from a career decision, especially if you want to talk about a guy that maybe had aspirations of being one day in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which obviously was still going to be a tall task for him. His chances of doing that were going to be a lot better, I think, in Pittsburgh than it is outside of Pittsburgh. And losing a whole year worth of stats there, and I just got a bad feeling about this for him. So we'll see.
Yeah, I thought he could have made the Hall of Fame. I think it's going to be obviously a lot tougher now. New team, missing a year, all that stuff. Dave, anything else you wanted to talk about topic-wise before we get to some reader emails?
Let's see here. Mike Hilton, there's a great article, or PFF had an article about how, making a case why Mike Hilton should be one of the top paid, slot cornerbacks this year. And Matthew Markson did a great job of recapping that, I think, this morning as well here. One of the things that we're looking for, I think, you and I both, and several others as well, too, is getting into this final week of OTAs, is will Sean Davis practice? I think that's one of the big storylines. I think he had said late last week that his intentions were to get back on the field this week, so that obviously will be a big storyline, potentially this week here. And knock on wood, this team has stayed healthy so far, so you'd definitely like to see that continue through these final 3 days of OTA practices there. Otherwise, what's been the biggest surprise so far? I guess it'd be a guy like Cameron Kelly getting some first team reps with Sean Davis out at free safety there. And what else has been?
Sutton Smith moving to fullback, getting reps there. That's been on for a week or two now. Yeah, not a whole lot, but I think no news is generally good news this time of year. And I'd like Sean Davis to practice, but if he doesn't, I want to make sure this team is cautious with him. I think him just having the comfort of knowing where he's going to play and playing in that position the year before for the first time really in his NFL career is going to be the biggest thing for him. So that's what I'm excited about, is just him staying in that free safety spot, knowing that's where he's going to play, and he can still take mental reps there, obviously. So even if he misses the mandatory minicamp and sits out, I won't lose much sleep about it.
All right, shall we do some questions?
Let's go for it.
All right, I got one. Oh boy, this Brett Nile wrote us a book here from Brett Nile, like the river. Thank you, Brett. San Angelo, Texas. Hey, Dave and Alex. A few short points. These aren't short. Had a couple confounding issues with Alex's. This goes back to your UDF study. Thought I should bring them up for discussion. I have 3 factors that might contribute to why the Steelers have been less aggressive towards UDFAs in recent years and would have less production. 1, multiple draft picks. Have the teams that have been willing to overpay for UDFAs been teams that had fewer draft picks. The Steelers in recent years have had at least 7 picks in most of the drafts. This year they had 9. It's hard for a team that's trying to win to add 9 or 10 rookies at a time. Number 2, tryout players. In recent years the Steelers have had an inordinate, he's using big words on me here, inordinate amount of players through tryout and secondary undrafted free agents, guys like Hilton, Villanueva, LJ Fort, and Matt Filer, etc. And they have also been more willing to keep guys on the practice squad to develop to roster like Finney and Dangerfield. Doesn't it stand to reason that if you have more of those guys, that fewer undrafted free agents will be getting a chance? And number 3, Super Bowl aspirations. Teams looking to get a Lombardi are naturally more likely to keep veterans as backups than UDFAs, right? Question mark. Thoughts? Now, let's see. Now I'll try to be brief but much like Dave, I have a hard time avoiding the rabbit holes. You discussed trading out Artie Burns last episode. Wouldn't this be better off to trade Burns for a low-level draft pick and re-sign Sensabaugh to be a bench corner who comes in mid-game in case of injury? Should be cheaper, and the coaches should have more trust, etc. Look, I mean, you could add. I'll answer that right away. You can add Sensabaugh right now, not even hardly move your cap on a 1-year minimum benefits deal there. So, it all comes back to whether or not you just want to trade Artie Burns, and how comfortable you feel with Sensabaugh. 2 over under time. Let's see, time till Oakland regrets. He's got some insignificant stuff here. Maybe we'll read the second half of this during our next podcast. I didn't want to go too deep in this. Thoughts on what he had to say about the undrafted free agent arguments there?
I mean, it's some good points. I'm not going to deny that. Yeah, you're getting help and kind of diamonds in the rough from other ways you build the roster, future contracts, and some waiver claims and kind of stuff like that. So I mean, I don't deny that, but I mean, I'm sure you go through every single team and say that those are teams that have built their rosters and found talent through a variety of different ways. And that's just what I want the Steelers to do. I want them to find talent through every process of the team building. I'm sure New England, Kansas City, and the Rams, I'm sure all those teams have found their own diamonds in the rough the way the Steelers have found guys like Hilton and Villanueva. So if it wasn't just the Steelers as literally the only exception, then maybe you could point to some of those things and I would understand that point more. But the Steelers are literally the only team, and I have a hard time believing that they're so great at finding this talent and everyone else is so terrible at it that it's not creating those roster spots for undrafted players. And to the last point about keeping veterans over undrafted players as backups, okay, fair enough, though I don't know if that's 100% true, but why can't these guys even make the practice squad, where obviously you're generally not keeping veteran players? Remember, 4 of the 32 UDFAs from the last 3 classes have either made the week 1 roster or the practice squad, and one of those was a Denier on IR. So, that's a terrible percentage. So I get what you're saying. I don't buy it enough because I don't think that the Steelers are doing something so right that the rest of the league isn't doing that's compelling those guys, the other 31 teams, to hoard and keep their UDFAs.
Brett, do me a favor. Send me the second half of that email in a separate email for the next show there, and try to shorten it up a little bit more for me there, buddy. Appreciate this email here. Richard Gamir writes in, this question is only for Dave. Have you and Alex ever actually met? Have you ever been to or considered to attending training camp? No, Alex and I have never met. Have I ever considered attending training camp? No. Quite honestly, we get more work done, more productive stuff on the site if Alex goes to training camp and I sit behind my computer here in Las Vegas. Really, I mean, to me, it'd be kind of overkill if both of us went, or maybe this year we'll have Daniel out there, maybe a practice or 2 with Alex or whatnot, if he can make it in from Canada. But no, all the way around to your questions there. Anything to add?
It was for Dave only, so I'm sitting this one out.
Let's see.
If you could ever make it to Latrobe one day, maybe 10, 15 years from now, I mean, you should, because it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll see.
All right.
Too many humans for me.
Yeah. Go on a weekday. Weekends, yeah, you're not gonna like it.
Let's see, from Jeff Arbogast writes in, who will be the Steelers' number 2 tight end? Does Xavier Grimble give us anything as a blocker? The answer to that is yes. He does give you something as a blocker. Is he? Look, I remember talking about this on the podcast, and I think writing about it once or twice during, maybe it was a preseason game against, did they play the Colts last year during the preseason, or was it preseason before? I remember he took a big turn in that game where we saw him seemingly improve some as a blocker. Make no mistake about it, you're not dealing with Matt Spaeth here. Mm-hmm. when you're talking about Xavier Grimble here. I think he's made some strides in that area. Is he at his ceiling when it comes to being a blocking tight end? Perhaps. I mean, he's been around the league that long now. Jeff goes on to write, how athletic is Christian Scotland Williamson, i.e. can he run? Because Jesse James' nickname should have been instant replay since the dude always looked like he was in slow motion there. I agree with when it comes to Jesse James out in space, but make no mistake about it, Jesse made some bigger plays last year down the field, and generally, thankfully because Ben Roethlisberger's ability to extend some plays. Jesse didn't have the best of hands either. Let's be honest here. Jesse let a few of them go. Had some drops, and I think at least one interception can be blamed on Jesse last year as well too. That said, do I hate that they lost Jesse? I mean, if given my druthers, would I rather have had Jesse James stay? Other than Xavier Grimble, yes, but I mean that's why Jesse made the money that he made with Detroit this offseason. I guess the question goes on, and you've seen him more than I have because you've been at training camp and got to see more of him. Christian Scotland Williamson, how athletic is he, Alex? Can he run?
If Jesse James is instant replay, then Christian Scotland Williamson is slow-mo replay because that guy might be less athletic on the football field. Now, we'll see him year two. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you play slower year one when you're coming over from rugby and all the things we know that he's kind of going up against and the hill that he's climbing. So I'm not going to, I said this in an earlier podcast on an earlier question. Let's go through the first 3-4 practices, and then I'll tell you if we have something with Scotland Williamson or not. I think you'll find out pretty quickly. But last year, I think he caught one pass that went farther than 5 yards downfield in camp and preseason. So, he's a big guy at 6'8", 260 or whatever he's weighing in at, and he moves like that too. To answer the original question, yes, Grimble's the number 2 tight end right now, and yes, I do think his blocking's taken some pretty big strides. It's about developing consistency. That's the key for Grimble. Consistency in his game has yet to show it.
And look, I mean, he can get down the field a little bit.
Yeah, he's an athlete. Yeah, he's a good athlete. I mean, there's no denying that.
Obviously, and Jeff, if you've listened, to the podcast throughout, the off season here, tight end, Alex and I have shared our concerns about it. You keep Vance McDonald in bubble wrap as far as I'm concerned, most of training camp and into the preseason, because good Lord knows, I'm going back last year through jumping around some of the Steelers highlights from last year and all. Boy, that guy could run over some people. When he is healthy, like he was for 15 games last season, you see the fascination with Vance McDonald. I mean, and how big of part of the offense that he could potentially be in 2019, just based on what he gave you last year, the 50 whatever catches and all like that. I mean, he could potentially exceed his good numbers from last season there. But oh boy, do they got to keep that guy healthy, and that obviously going to be a big concern there. And if God forbid something should happen with him, Xavier Grimble's not Vance McDonald, plain and simple. There, and you would have to think between now, as we said, we saw him try to do this with the kid that was recently Jordan Leggett waived by the Jets. There, don't be surprised if the Steelers add a tight end with some level of experience, more so as a blocker than maybe as a receiver, but probably have a little bit of athletic trait to him between now and the start of the regular season.
What's crazy with Vance is that if he can get through this training camp healthy, it'll be his first training camp with the team, and he's been with the team since 2017. He got traded over from San Fran after the team broke camp in 2017. Then last year he missed all but the first 3 practices of camp. So this is really a time for him, again, if he can stay healthy, to really go through his first training camp as a Steeler, build a better rapport with Big Ben, and just be able to breathe and get through the season hitting the ground running. It's kind of crazy. 3 years with the team, he's yet to really have a training camp.
Yeah, it's always like Rosanna Danny always used to say, it's always something. And
yeah, I get that reference. I'm not lying.
You actually do get that?
No,
reference?
I don't know. I have no idea. Way over my head.
Gilda Radner, one of the original cast members on Saturday Night Live, used to play a character called Rosanna Dana. And her catchphrase used to be, "It's always something," and it always seems to be always something, or has been up until last year. Thankfully, with Vance McDonald there, and look, I mean, he's talked in the past, looking for, I think even going back to last year's OTAs before wasn't it last year that he started off OTAs and then something happened that kept him sidelined for some OTAs last year? Was that last year or was that the year before?
Well, it couldn't have been the year before because he
Right,
wouldn't
because
have been part of OTAs.
so it had to be
But,
last year, I
yeah.
think.
Was it the foot injury that lingered, or was it something separate? Because he had the foot in camp.
Yeah, I don't remember. It seemed like there was something.
It probably was something else because he started camp last year. He went through the first 3 practices and got hurt, I think, on day 4, and then didn't practice again. So it's probably something else.
Yeah, but I mean, look, he's had enough time with Ben now that, God forbid, he shouldn't miss some time. At least he's got some good work in.
Yeah, it's just nice because I mean, last year, I mean, you're getting back on that moving train. You're trying to get back in football shape. His snap count was down last year. He played about 50% of the snaps, even though he played in all 15 games. It'd just be nice for him to go through a camp, have that experience, and then just be able to say, we're going full speed ahead into a season where I haven't just been traded or I've been hurt and missed 6 weeks, and I'm just trying to get back on track.
And I think what you're going to see again this year, per usual, and obviously Todd Haley did this a lot too. I think you're going to see one of these extra tackles get 6-7 snaps a game as an extra blocker at times in this offense. We've had everybody and their brother do that. I mean, even B.J. Finney has spent time on the outside. Obviously, Chris Hubbard when he was with the Steelers, and I think you're just going to see a little bit more of that this year, whether it be Filer or Chuks Okorafor. I think you're going to see 6 or 7 snaps where those guys are going in, reporting as eligible to help as maybe a additional blocker.
Or Hawkins. Hawkins did it.
Hawkins,
yeah. Healthy year. Filer would be interesting. I don't know if Filer could do it because I don't know if I see a good enough athlete to do that. So it'd be interesting if Okorafor wins the right tackle job and Hawkins somehow isn't active or on the team, what they're going to do there. But Okorafor did it last year. Hawkins could do it. I agree. You have options and you're probably going to see that tackle eligible.
From Joe Strong writes in this question about Cam Sutton. Hi, Dave and Alex. Love the podcast and work team does on the site. So thank you, Joe, for reading and listening. Alex, great write-up on Cam Sutton. It's almost 2 years since preseason 2017 that there has seemingly been a Steelers Depot Cam Love Talk Story Fest. And I guess that was maybe because he made that splash. Didn't he have the injury during his rookie season, and then he came in during that game against the Carolina Panthers, and then made a couple plays, and then had the aggravated a hamstring injury or whatnot again there. So we haven't really had a lot of reason to have Cam Sutton, a love talk story fest, if you will. He goes on to write, to me, from what I've watched, it boils down to 2 to 3 things limiting his success. Undersized, overmatched, not fast enough. Well, those are some pretty big things. Right? He's small and gets overmatched easily by larger tight end and wide receiver. Too slow to play slot corner. Can't keep up. Too small and slow slot down the line of scrimmage. Hard to improve on these attributes. And he asked for our thoughts on there. Look, Joe, Cam Sutton was always one of those marginal guys anyway. I remember way back, even the year before he came out, when they thought he might come out, he was tabbed. Somebody, I forget who it was. Maybe it was even who was our buddy moving the sticks?
Daniel Jeremiah.
Didn't Daniel Jeremiah even have him as the Steelers' potential in one of those first early offseason mocks? And he ended up, I think Sutton stayed in school that year. But I think he mocked to the Steelers in the first round that year. Obviously, like I say, he stayed in school, didn't come out till later there. But he's always been kind of that marginal guy. He's been more William Gay than anything. And I think the thing that got us most excited maybe about Cameron Sutton after he was drafted was his ability to maybe understand the defense quickly and know all positions more so than his athletic traits there. And, you go back, a lot of people don't realize Cam Sutton had the first interception in 2018 last year against the Browns. Was that I think it was in overtime there. But not a lot to cheer about from Cam Sutton right now. And I talked about maybe how he could potentially be the backup slot guy, but Alex kind of rebutted that last week, saying not sure if he's got the athleticism and the ability to play inside, that maybe he's better suited as the outside there. So thoughts, Alex?
Well, I think he could be the backup slot guy. I mean, if Hilton were to go down, do you kick Nelson inside? I think, again, it's dependent on how Justin Lane's coming along, how the pieces all fit. I don't know about the lack of athleticism for Sutton. I mean, he's an average athlete, but that in the slot, that's not gonna kill you. I think what Sutton does really well is defend the vertical route. I think he does a great job tracking the football, locating it, playing the ball in the air, timing his jumps on anything vertical. Where I think he gets into trouble is basically on all those crossing routes and in and out-breaking routes. And I did a post the other day that kind of highlighted the issues he's had against tight ends and against slot receivers defending those breaking routes. And so that's where I want to see him get better at. And that's why I think he's a better fit on the outside than in a slot corner. Obviously, on the outside, you're going to defend that as well, but you're going to see the vertical route a whole lot more. And I think in the slot, you're definitely going to see every kind of breaking route. And I don't think that's where Sutton functions best. I don't think he's physical enough or good enough in run support to be an ideal slot guy. And he doesn't have that feel as a blitzer either that Steelers like to have that, say, Mike Hilton possesses. So in general, I would rather they have Sutton on the outside and then maybe cross-train as a backup free safety. But based on the current roster construction, he may be stuck in the slot, and I just don't think that's the best place for his skill set.
And he's a backup, right?
Yeah, I think we're getting to that point. I mean, I can't see him starting this year, knowing what we know about Hilton now. That he's been running first team, that he really was hampered by that elbow injury last year. I mean, I just don't know where Sutton comes in. I mean, if Hilton were to go down, maybe Sutton's next man up, but I really feel like he's going to become the Swiss Army knife of just playing wherever you need him to, because he could play it. He could play slot. He could play outside. I bet he gets some more work at safety in camp in the preseason. So I think he just becomes that ultimate backup, the Chris Hubbard-ish of the secondary.
Cody Sensabaugh 2.0.
Yeah, I don't know if Sensabaugh. I guess Sensabaugh had some versatility. He didn't show as much of it in Pittsburgh, but yeah, he could play inside out.
He did in Tennessee.
Yeah, he played inside out with the Giants too a little bit. Yeah, I mean maybe a little better version of that, but I think that's a fair comparison. Maybe a little better version of Sensabaugh.
You just hope more than anything you can get some good, strong special teams ability out of him this year when it comes to Cameron Sutton, and he's probably going to see some snaps at some point. In the defense there, and you like to see some progression there. We'll learn probably a little bit more about, assuming he stays healthy. We'll learn a little bit more about Cameron Sutton this year during the preseason and training camp.
Sure, I mean he's only a third-year guy, but this year does feel like a make-or-break year for him. Either he's going to find a home and carve out a role, or he's not, and the team's really going to definitely move on, especially after drafting Justin Lane. They're good for taking a corner probably every single year. So, yeah, not seeing a great path for Cam Sutton right now.
All right, got one here from Russ Obenstein. Hi, guys. Hoping all teams will underestimate us as much as the media. I think we'll be in top 5 on both offense and defense. Do you guys think? Okay, that one got cut off there, but he sent a follow-up here. Why, as owner of a team paying these guys millions, not put a clause in their contract that it's against team policy to post any team-related business about fellow players or issues you have related to the team on social media or in interviews with the media? Russ seems to be really, really anti-media here. You will be required to take those issues up with the coaches in-house. Some may say that you're infringing on their freedom of speech, but you're not. You're simply dictating the proper procedure to do so. This is what I would do as an owner, and eliminates these problems once and for all. I don't think with the money they are making that this is asking too much. If you do not like the policy, then sign elsewhere. This would be precedent that I feel rest of the team would follow, and perhaps make it a part of the CBA. Well, good luck with that. It's just got to stop. What are your thoughts on this? Well, Russ, we know you're Bill Belichick here. You're trying to. I don't know why Bill Belichick's trying to email our show, Alex. Look, Russ, I understand here, but I mean the Steelers. It's just not the Steelers how the Steelers operate there. I mean, they let the players have some individuality here. Has it come back to bite them in the butt a few times on social media more than once? Yeah, absolutely. Would some of these same players have been able to do this stuff in New England? Probably not, right, Alex? I mean, but also sure. Belichick has no problem. But Belichick doesn't care who you are. He'll send you packing. I thought there was a great thing about even this this kicker, this fringe kicker, that in fact I think his agent's been tweeting me on Twitter wanting me to publicize this obscure kicker who evidently got a tryout with the Patriots this past year. Well, this kicker was asked, I think maybe in an interview with NFL.com or one of them anyway. He was asked about how he did in some of these kick opportunities while he was just a tryout guy with the Patriots. He says, "Look, I don't think I need to be answered." And this was while he was still trying out for him. He said, I don't think I don't think I need to be answering that question." We're just talking about how he did on some of his longer field goal attempts. Bill Belichick has such a look. You don't talk about our business, what happens, outside. And it's just how they do business, Russ. I mean, I don't. I mean, I guess that the team can try to tighten up the reins a little bit more. But what are you going to do? Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. I wouldn't go so far to put that as a clause in a contract. I think that's too much of an overreach, and how do you even enforce that? But yeah, I mean, I understand the frustrations by it. You don't want to have this crap out there, and with the vultures that circle around the Steelers and the problems that they've had, you don't want to give any more fuel to that fire. But I'm not adding a clause or anything like that to try to combat that. I'm going to do that in other more diplomatic ways.
Daryl Smith writes in, Dave, first I want to say thank you for all that you and your staff do, write articles on their website. It's my go-to for Steeler news. Also want to say thank you to you and Alex for doing such a great job on the podcast. Thank you, Daryl. I've been listening for almost 2 years now. Your podcast makes my hour commute tolerable. Boy, I'm going to print that out for my wife to read. My voice makes a commute tolerable. I do have one question for you about Steelers Depot site. Is there any plans on creating a phone application for content? Trying to balance all that we do with the site and rebuilds and updates and all like that makes it tough. It has crossed our mind, Daryl. We just haven't gotten there yet. So we apologize for it. I would assume maybe at some point we'll get there. It just hasn't been. My priority is providing, and Alex would agree, providing great content for you guys. If we do that, everything else will fall into place. Sure, some of the technical things like maybe a better app or a app at all would be profitable as well too. We just got to make sure when I do stuff like that, I want to make sure I do it right. So thanks for writing in, Daryl. One last email here, and this is an interesting one, and I saved this for last because of it, Alex. This is about Steven Nelson, why KC parted ways. Hey, Dave and Alex, I was just thinking about this from Jeff Berg, if I didn't mention that. I was just thinking about Steven Nelson being set free from KC after 3 to 4 seasons. The Steelers typically don't let someone go who they drafted until maybe year 5. But that's only if they're not a viable starter. We have kept Burns on the roster while he has struggled immensely. I was wondering if y'all could shed some light as to why a team who's fresh off a playoff run would let Steven Nelson, a viable starter, go. This is he's trying to backdoor us here. Alex, he's trying to say, well, Steven Nelson must suck because the Chiefs let him go. I'm being funny there, trying to frame it this way. But I mean, I guess overall it's a good question. What did or didn't Steven Nelson do to warrant making him a priority for the Chiefs to re-sign?
I mean, it's a good point. It's something you always want to think about, but that's true of any free agent. I mean, why has Dante Moncrief been let go by the Colts, then let go by Jacksonville? I mean, you could play that game. Why has Mark Barron been let go by the Rams, even though they went to a Super Bowl with him? I mean, those are questions you can ask of any free agent. And to the comparisons of Artie Burns, well, I mean, Artie Burns is still under his rookie deal, and, Steven Nelson wasn't a first-round pick, so we didn't have the fifth-year option. Nelson played out his rookie deal and then moved on. That happens sometimes. I don't know if it was a money issue or he wanted more money than what the Chiefs were willing to pay or able to pay. And I do recognize that Nelson did have some really good moments in Kansas City, but he also had some pretty poor moments in Kansas City. He was, to some degree, kind of a feast or famine type corner. So maybe the team was looking for a little bit more consistency there. I'm not quite sure what they have in-house in terms of internal options that they have a corner or what their plan was. But I think if we want to talk about him on the field, there was certainly a bit of inconsistency and high-low variance with this game.
Every player has a value attached to them, and the Chiefs obviously, for what the Steelers did, and make no mistake about it too, the Steelers have guys that they like. Okay, Steven Nelson is a guy that they like pre-draft. Dante Moncrief is a guy they like pre-draft. Most of the times, the Steelers that the free agents they go after are guys that they've liked in the past before whatever year that player was drafted. And the Steelers will probably tend to overpay some for those players. Now, in the contracts that they do for the players, however, they give themselves wiggle room to get out of it without minimal damage. And unfortunately, we had to witness that. I mean, how many times do you see the Steelers add two priority free agents, like Morgan Burnett and John Bostic, just to cut them 1 year later? You don't go into that with the idea, with the hope that happens, but at least you have the ability to do that. And I mean, those two guys just didn't give you what you needed to do. Did they overpay a little bit maybe more when Morgan Burnett? Maybe. John Bostic less so there. Now you got a guy with Steven Nelson, which is essentially, make no mistake about it, and really Moncrief too. Those guys are really on 1 year contracts if you want to boil it down to it here. Now it's up to them to whether or not they can stay past that. Steven Nelson has some position flexibility there. And but the fact of the matter is they wanted a guy that's come. And here's the other thing: the Steelers generally go after some guys that are coming off of some pretty decent seasons. We saw that with Mike Mitchell a few years ago, right? When they got him, and then obviously Steven Nelson coming off of a season where he got 4 interceptions, the only 4 of his career. So, and they're hole pluggers are what they are. They are players that'll get them to and through the draft, and that's what you have this year. And they're also guys that they can, if need be, they can cut them. That they have some potential upside left to them, yet they can get out. How surprised will you be a year from now, Alex, if we're talking about Steven Nelson and Dante Moncrief being cut?
Very surprised, especially with Nelson. Moncrief, I guess it could happen, but I'd be pretty floored if Nelson got cut 1 year into this thing.
I think you could see one or two gone. Hopefully it's not Nelson,
Yeah, I mean, I guess Moncrief could go, but Nelson, I mean, something's got to. I mean, what would it take for Nelson to be? I mean, unless he struggles and Lane really plays well, they decide Nelson is too expensive to be a backup. But I mean, that's far from ideal.
Yeah, these are guys that you think can help you for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. Well, the Chiefs let him go, so he must suck.
I mean, it's again, it's always a concern. But why did the Jets lose James Ferrier? Why did Washington get rid of Ryan Clark? Why did the 49ers want to dump Vance McDonald? I mean, you can play that game for any free agent, literally, and there's always going to be variables, and maybe one team misused a player, misevaluated a player. I mean, there's a ton of factors at work here. So I don't get too. I think about it, but I don't. It doesn't keep me up at night.
Adam Bendis wants to know why we don't get a press pass for one of us. A, those guys don't want us there, and B, be honest with you, some of the things that Alex reports during some of the detailed stuff that Alex provides our readers and listeners during training camp. I've been told point blank that we wouldn't be able to do that kind of stuff if we had Alex on a press pass there. So.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Some of the detailed stuff. Just the order of the guys. The lines and stuff. Some of the things that you give detailed stuff on, the media is just not allowed to report. Unless they're told by a player that X was running with this team and that team or whatnot.
Right. Well, I know it gets really restrictive during the year and during OTAs right now. That's why you're not hearing a whole lot. When camps open, I think those rules get relaxed a little bit, especially with the videos and stuff. I mean, I could take videos to camp. I know people ask me about that sometimes, but I kind of respect the media or the team rule of because media can't do it, so I don't do it either. But certainly we've seen a big influx of guys that'll just basically tape the entire practice and then post it on Twitter. So I don't go that far. But I'll say this is that, for one, we have had a press pass before. We've done some stuff like that with other people. So it's something we could be open to in the future. I don't want to completely rule that out. And also, if I got a press pass, it would be a lot harder for me to log everything that I do during practice, because it's a whole lot easier to write these notes when able to sit down, have my notes on my lap, as opposed to standing up. That's what all media members do during practice. They stand next to the field trying to write that down and also not get plowed by Dan McCullers. I don't need the guy get destroyed by Dan McCullers or a linebacker hitting me on the sideline. So in a lot of ways, it is easier to sit down and write my notes as opposed to standing up. And also, I might be adding something a little bit new to training camp log this year. I've been kicking around the idea. We'll see if we do it or not, but certainly it's going to require me to probably, focus even more and be able to sit down for that. So that's another benefit to not having the press pass.
All right. And look, I mean, do we need another guy out there getting quotes?
Right. Yeah, I think we're pretty good on that.
All right. All right, Alex, anything else to add before we shut it down until Friday?
Nope, that's everything from me.
All right, we'll have obviously a lot more to talk about during the Friday show, recapping what will have been the Steelers' third and final week of OTA practices, and we'll see what else happens news-wise with the team before that. Hopefully not much major at this point. Just get through practices right now. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. You can email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the donate button upper right navigational bar. If you want a year's subscription to an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, it's been really popular for a lot of people even during the off-season here. Go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button upper right navigational bar for $25. You can have a calendar year's access to an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.